Full argument. Trump-Zelensky White House meeting descends into shouting match. It was supposed to be a pivotal moment in U.S.-Ukraine relations, a meeting that could shape the course of the war and define the future of diplomacy between the two nations. Instead, it became an unprecedented public confrontation, exposing deep divisions and turning into an almost theatrical display of humiliation and power imbalance.
He's all dressed up today. We gave you through this
hostile welcome.
$350 billion.
From the moment President Volodymyr Zelensky entered the Oval Office, it was clear he was walking into an ambush. Before any discussions about war, diplomacy, or Ukraine's survival, he was met with personal jabs. He's all dressed up today, veiled mockery of Zelensky's trademark military-style clothing. Do you own a suit? His tone hovering between amusement and derision. Zelensky, undeterred, responded with dignity. I will wear a suit after this war finishes, he said, subtly reminding them that while they sat comfortably in Washington, his country was still fighting for survival. But the tone had already been set. This was not going to be a respectful diplomatic exchange. It was a confrontation. An argument spirals out of control.
It's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying.
What began as a discussion about military aid and diplomatic strategy quickly spiraled into a one-sided lecture. Zelensky attempted to explain the realities of war,
He broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and
highlighting how Russia had broken ceasefires, killed civilians, and refused prisoner exchanges. But his attempts to argue his case were repeatedly drowned out. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
You to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring people, you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
Zelensky fired back. Have you ever been to Ukraine? Have you seen what happens there? I have watched and seen the stories, came the dismissive response, reducing the Ukrainian president's lived experience to mere headlines in the American press. The conversation escalated further. Trump and his team made it clear they viewed Ukraine as a dependent, not an ally.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people.
They repeatedly questioned Zelensky's leadership, accused his administration of corruption, and insisted that without U.S. support, Ukraine was doomed. You don't have the cards, Trump stated bluntly. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Demand for gratitude.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
But the real boiling point come when V.G. Vance reminded Trump, his patience thinning, demanded public gratitude. Have you said thank you once in this entire meeting? He asked, his voice rising. Just say thank you. Zelensky, standing his ground, reminded them that Ukraine had been fighting alone for years. We are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We are thankful. I said thanks in this cabinet. But that wasn't enough. Trump and his team insisted that without American weapons and aid, Ukraine would have fallen within weeks. Obama gave you sheets, I gave you javelins, Trump boasted, reducing years of strategic alliances and defense support to a personal favor that required repayment in the form of submission and deference. The collapse of diplomacy.
In 2 weeks, of course he has.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again,
I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
I can tell you
You're
again,
running low on soldiers.
Listen, please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a...
As the meeting dragged on, the pressure on Zelensky mounted. He was outnumbered, with no allies in the room. Every attempt he made to assert his country's position was met with dismissal, condescension, and increasing frustration from the American side. The final blow came when the scheduled joint press conference was abruptly canceled.
All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right, we'll see what we can do about putting it together. Thank you. Guys, let's go. Guys, come on, let's go.
I think we've seen enough, Trump declared, signaling the end of what had become a diplomatic disaster. Zelensky was swiftly escorted out, his presidential car pulling away from the West Wing, leaving behind a fractured relationship and an uncertain future for Ukraine's ties with the U.S. The fallout was immediate and far-reaching. European leaders, already wary of Trump's erratic approach to foreign policy, expressed their dismay. President Zelensky, you do not walk alone, European Commission leaders reassured him in a rare public rebuke of the U.S. administration. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Russian officials barely concealed their delight. Former President Dmitry Medvedev mocked Zelensky, calling him an insolent pawn discarded by his masters. For Ukraine, the meeting was a stark warning. The unwavering support it once relied on from the U.S. was no longer guaranteed. The humiliation Zelensky endured in Washington signaled a dangerous shift, one that could leave Ukraine increasingly isolated on the world stage. A historic misstep. What was meant to be a pivotal diplomatic meeting instead became a public reckoning. Trump's performance, at times theatrical, at times ruthless, showed the world exactly where Ukraine stood in his foreign policy playbook. Not as an equal partner, but as a subordinate expected to show gratitude and obedience. As Zelensky left the White House, one question lingered in the minds of many watching. Was this the beginning of Ukraine's abandonment by its most powerful ally?